Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our studies here on Mondays at 8 p.m. Have a good evening, everybody. My name is Shane Martin, and today on Labor Day in the United States of America, we will be talking about the law of labor. In September, we're going to start our talks on the divine laws. We're going to highlight some of the divine laws in the Spirit's book, part 3 of the Spirit's book. But before we start talking about labor, I'm going to invite my friends Evelyn and Eric to join us. Hello, dear friends. How are you?
Hi, doing
Hello.
good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to do some work on a holiday dedicated to the laborers of the world. So before we start, as we always do, we're going to invite everybody to listen to an inspirational message that Eric's going to bring to us, and then we'll move on to our initial prayer. The floor is yours, Eric.
From the book Our Daily Bread by Francisco Xavier. Number 4, prior to service. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Jesus. Matthew 20:28. While in the company of the spirit of service, we shall always be well protected. The entire creation reaffirms this truth with absolute clarity. From the inferior kingdoms to the higher spheres, all things serve in their own time. The law of work, with its division and the specialization of tasks, is preponderant in the humblest elements of the various sectors of nature. The tree will cure illnesses, that other ones will produce fruit. There are stones that contribute to the construction of home, others serve as a foundation for road construction. The Father designated the planetary home to the human being, whereby each object is found in its proper place, merely awaiting the dignified effort and proper word in order to teach mankind the art of service. If provided with the gunpowder designated to spark the energy, and if this gunpowder is utilized as an instrument of death to his fellow man, the earthly user is accountable, because the Supreme Being suggests that every action be in the practice of good, aiming the elevation and enrichment of all the values of the universal patrimony. Let us not forget that Jesus worked while he was among us. Let us examine the nature of his sacrificing service and learn from the Master the happiness of sanctifying service. You can start immediately. A hoe or a casserole constitute an excellent way to begin. If you feel ill and unable to make a direct contribution, you can still commence by helping in the moral edification of your brothers.
All right, dear friends, we will invite everybody to our initial prayer. And then we always recommend that we close our eyes if it's safe for us to do so, that we take a few moments to connect with the good spirits and to repeat the words of the prayer mentally if you can. And for the friends that are watching us on demand as well, do the same if it's safe for you and we can connect. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you for allowing us to be together tonight. Thank you for all the help that we receive in our daily lives. Thank you for the inspiration and guidance we receive from our guardian angels. And today, we pray that during our studies, we can open our hearts to perceive their presence by our side. May these moments of reflection and discussion allow us to feel whole, healed, and consoled. Dear God, we pray that we are also instruments for the good spirits. May they help all of the discarnate beings that are around us that have joined us tonight for a moment of learning and reflection. We pray that all of around us, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our cities, in our states, and all throughout the planet Earth, that we are all surrounded by your love and divine providence, and that the good spirits may travel all throughout, reaching anyone and everyone who may be suffering. May we all feel united. May we all feel supported by you, dear God. We ask you for your protection. We ask you for your guidance. And with your permission, we begin our studies today. And so be it. All right, dear friends, Evelyn and Eric, we will now part to go to this another part of our studies where we will talk about work. And then as I address different aspects of the law of labor on the third part of the Spirit's book, I will bring you guys back later for our discussions, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you. See you soon. All right, dear friends, let me just adjust that we're not talking about initial prayer. Just 1 second. So we can make sure my systems are working. Okay, so as we're going to talk today, as I alluded to the point that this is the topics. If you're joining us live on YouTube or on Facebook, feel welcome. If you have any questions or comments, we can see that some of you are live and I'll be happy to answer you and say hi to you if you write it here. I'm able to acknowledge you here and thank you so much for joining me. So the Spirit's book. So we're going to do the month of September, which is also today's Labor Day. So we chose to talk about the law of labor. But before we talk about the law of labor, we want to talk about where is the law of labor present in our spiritist literature. You want to make sure we know where to look for guidance when we are in doubt. And the Spirit's book is divided in 4 parts. Part 3 addresses all the divine laws. It starts with the natural law and divides all the laws. And the first law that you're going to see is the natural law, and then followed by worship, labor, reproduction, preservation, destruction, society, progress, equality, freedom, justice, love, and charity. So in this month of September, today we're going to talk about the law of labor. There are 121 pages, and this is the version I have. It's from 2016 from this International Spiritist Council. So you may have a slightly variation there, but it's always in the third part of the Spirit's book. And you want to make sure that you go there next time you have any questions. And there are 278 questions and answers for all of the divine laws that regulate our existence in this world as spirits created by God to progress. So we always want to do that. And next week, we're going to talk about cherishing life because September is also Suicide Awareness Month. We want to make sure we also address the topics of the current times and where the literature of Spiritism is on the topic of suicide. But today we're going to talk about work, and then we're going to talk about the law of justice, love, and charity, and the law of equality later in the month. So join us. First, what is work? So when we're talking about work, are we talking just about what you and I do for a living that earn us a paycheck? Is that the kind of labor? Is it law of labor that Kardec kindly composed with the teachings of Spiritism? We'll see. Because when we understand what the definition of work is in the Spiritist view, it opens up so many possibilities for us for service. So the work is The definition of work is on question 675. Kardec asks, should we understand labor to entail only material occupations, meaning the things you do each and every day, our professions, our vocations, our jobs? What do you think the Spirit said? They replied, no. The spirit labors as much as the body. Every useful occupation is labor. Can you imagine that? So that opens our minds and hearts to so many possibilities, because work is not just your profession. It's just not what allows you to provide for your family, for yourself, but opens up possibilities, because he says here the spirit labors as much as the body. That means you can work when you're awake, you can work when you're asleep, you can work when you're cooking, when you're cleaning, when you're caring for your loved ones, when you're volunteering. You can work when you're volunteering at the Spiritist Center, posting a message, praying. And as we read in the message, as Eric read for us in the inspirational message from the book Our Daily Bread, Emmanuel brings to us that all of the kingdoms of nature at some point in their own levels and in their own evolution are working and laboring for survival, for taking care of their own selves. So there is so many opportunities for us to labor. And then also in that message that complements this topic and is also part of the law of labor that we're going to talk about in the end, what if I can't work? And he says, if you feel ill, Emmanuel says, you can labor, you can work by giving off of your spiritual gifts. We can pray that tonight, after we are done here, we return to our spiritual homes. We go to the colonies, or we go to our spiritist centers and the spiritist hospitals, and we join in one of those beautiful expeditions as described by the Spirit André Luiz on his books, that we can serve the spirits that are all around us serving, or even our own family members and friends if they are in need. I would like to invite you to look in the book Foreign Life as well. There are very enlightening chapters about profession and vocation in that book, that enlightens us a little bit more about what it is to have a profession, what it is to have a title, what it is to exert work, and what happens when you go from selfless giving, when your duty ends and you continue to serve others. That's when you connect with the higher spirits. Is work needed? Do we need to work? Okay, we know what work is. It's every usable occupation. It's not restricted to our physical labor. And now the next question is a necessity of labor or law of nature? And the spirits reply, labor is a law of nature, and as such is a necessity, because civilizations both increase people's needs and their enjoyment is obliged them to work more. So as you and I are in this level of evolution on the earth, we are incarnated, living this physical existence. Labor is a necessity. The spirits go on to explain that we, because of the physical nature and the very crude nature of our physical bodies, labor is a necessity. We need to labor in order to earn a living. We need to labor in order to get, to help others. We need to labor in order to get our food, security, shelter. So as you and I are today, we need to labor. It is not something we cannot just say, okay, I'm here in the physical body and I don't need to work. We'll take care of what if you can't work due to impairments or disabilities at the end. But if you and I are able-bodied and able to do so, we should be working. And why do we need to work? Two questions. Of course, the whole chapter describes it, but then the spirits answer. On question 676, they say works is a means of expiation and at the same time means of perfecting their intelligence. Here Kardec was asking about the labor of animals and how that different from the labor of humans. We know humans are a different kingdom and as the animals and different levels of evolution than animals. And the spirits explain that in the animal kingdom, in the vegetable kingdom for that matter, work is restricted to preservation, reproduction, survival. Yet he says in humans, labor or work allows us to progress. And through laboring, we can help ourselves. We can learn new things. We expiate. We go through difficulties. We go through different situations of moral and intellectual improvement. And we also, what do? We go ahead and we are able to improve the environment all around us. Imagine if we're just sitting around enjoying ourselves, humanity would not reach progress. And also in question 677, the Spirit says that work is needed for the preservation of the body and the development of thought. In the same line, in the same repetition. Repetition allows for perfection. And they say, yes, we need to work to better ourselves. And then going back to the concept that every useful activity is work, even unpaid work is work, even in the earth. Work that is not paid, such as caregiving, for example, or taking care of your house. Sometimes nobody's paying you to take care of your house. You're actually paying other people to do it. It's still useful activity. Prayers, when we pray in the Spiritist centers, when we pray in our home, when we do the gospel at home, we're working. When we go to the spiritual realm to learn something new, to bring it back, we are laboring. And then by so, we are learning, we are improving ourselves, and we are bettering everyone and everything around us. Is there a limit to work? In the spirits, yes, the limit to work is that of one's strength. However, God leaves us free to decide where our limit is. So what they're saying here is that we're not going to work, and drop dead. We have to do what? Which doesn't seem to be here, but there's a limit to work. And in this chapter, the spirits will remind us that rest is also needed. Now, God leaves us with our free will to decide what our limit is, and then it's also up to us to reap what we sowed. So if we are able-bodied and capable, and if we are not working as well as much as we could, and most importantly, we made a lot of commitments when we came back from the spiritual home to reincarnate, so we're also going to be responsible for the choices we've made if we decide not to work as much as we had promised or we are able to. But rest is also important. The same way that you and I have to take care of the body for physical hygiene, good nutrition, exercise, spiritual nourishment, intellectual nourishment, good messages, good books, we also need to rest. The example that comes to mind here is in the book No Solar. We also always like to bring these teachings to our daily lives. So you may be going to work at your job, and then you come home and there's still stuff to do, but then you can still pray and do other things. That at some point, physical labor requires rest, because we have a physical body that if we don't rest well, we will incur in destruction of the physical body, premature destruction of the physical body, or impairment of the physical body. In the book No Solar, André Luiz brings to us, he went there, he was first in the hospital. Once he gets better, he misses work, he misses his profession, yet he was not allowed to practice as a physician in the spiritual realm because he knew nothing about the spiritual medicine, although he was commended by Clarencio by his knowledge of the physical body. He was a very good physician in that sense, and a physiologist in that sense. Yet he asks for labor. And as he goes to work with the spirits that are recently arrived in our solar, he brings to us in his descriptions that there was a limit to the number of hours they could work each day. But they were required to work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, 1 day for rest. When they had extenuating circumstances, they were allowed overtime, or what we call overtime on the earth. For example, when they were receiving the spirits from World War II in the colony, there were more need for workers. They were allowed to work double shifts, those extra hours, and they were receiving the bonus hours that were corresponding to their labor. So even in the physical, in the spiritual realm, when we are in the spiritual realm, there's still spiritual body. We're not superior spirits. Um, we probably can extrapolate the superior spirits would need much less rest than you and I, because their spiritual body is much more pure, much lighter than ours. But when we are on the earth, we have to have a balance of work, useful activities, and rest, because we don't want to be considering direct suicide when we go there. And last but not least, what if you can't work? You ask me. Okay, you're saying labor is an useful activity, and then the spirits. And Kardec asked this question in answer 685a. Then what are the resources for old people who need to work for a living but can't? He also asked about if retirement is allowed. And yes, he says retirement is allowed. He says the strong should work for the weak. When the family does not help, society should take its place. And this is the law of charity, and that's the last law: justice, love, and charity in the Spirit's book. At the time, he didn't address people with disabilities, but we can think about ourselves older when our physical bodies are unable to work. And then what we say, we'd say that, what about the disabled folks? What if you're mentally or physically impaired? Of course, we have our families should take care of us. But if the families can, he say, the strong should work for the weak. The strong should help the weak. Again, I'll bring another example from the book No Solar. When the same audience with the same meeting with the minister Clarencio, André Luiz is paired with a woman who was in Solar for 6 years and only have a few hundred bonus hours, meaning she didn't work much during the 6 years that she was there. Yet, she received a place to be. Then she was more in the consideration of lazy than she didn't want to work. Didn't work out for her any of the departments he put in here. What happened? She was unable to gain the help, the friendship, the companionship of others. And then when her request of helping her family members on the earth was denied at the time, because she needed to reflect on the time that she was in Solar, using all the resources, but didn't give much back. Yet the spirits that are received from the lower zones in difficult conditions in the spiritual realm are also receiving help from the stronger, in a sense, the more prepared. You can go to the book Messengers, you're going to see that the outposts have a lot of spirits that are receiving help. They stay there for many years, sometimes decades, sleeping or in difficult conditions on the mental impairment, in different wards being cared for. So the workers care for them, and eventually they would also be asked to work. And who is going to ask them to work? There's not like a book that says you have to work. It's their own conscience. The same way that when André Luiz arrived at Non Solar from the hospital, he wasn't able to work. All he did was receive help. But the moment he got better, he looked around and he saw all the blessings he had received for being there, and he felt the need to serve back. It wasn't anybody saying, hey, you received 100 hours of nursing care, now you have to give back. It was his own conscience saying, I waste a lot of time on the earth with things that weren't very nourishing for my soul. When I'm here now, I really need to work. So we need to think about, how are we using our time in terms of all the useful activities that we have? And then how would we better spend our time balancing work, paid work, unpaid work, useful activities, caring for one another, caring for our loved ones? We have to think about how to help those who can't work, and we also need to think about that we need to work. We cannot waste our minutes and our time on the earth, because there are many, many spirits out there that would like to be reincarnated, and we're blessed to be here. So we need to make it count, the hours and minutes that we still have left in this reincarnation. Now, as we are, and I'm not alone, I will be inviting back my friends Evelyn and Eric to hear their thoughts and opinions on part 3 of the book No Solar. Oh, see, I'm confusing my books. Part 3 of the Spirit's book, And in my book is chapter 3, actually, chapter 3, part 3 of the Spirit's book. So, hello, dear friends. Welcome back.
Hi.
Make sure. Comments, thoughts on the law of labor.
I thought it was a good reminder of all the things that we do that are considered useful occupation, because actually we spend a lot more hours outside of our work, maybe. But we do, take care of our house, our family, volunteering. All these things are useful occupations, maybe for us, maybe for others, but that's considered labor. So even if you don't have like a formal job or a paying job, um, there are still many aspects that you're useful to society, right?
I think it's interesting to think about how labor has changed over the years. About, many years ago, people may have built their own home and worked to grow their own food. And now we do labor at our job, which is providing things of service to customers or customers inside the company, customers outside the company. And it seems like there's an endless ways to find more and more ways to serve other people. And I think it's interesting how a lot of our labor involves working with and for other people. It's labor can be a very social, it's part of society. Um, and finally, it's interesting also how if you look at dogs and cats that are our pets and live inside our homes, and we give them food and we give them shelter, yet in order for them to thrive, they need to be doing something. They need to go for walks. They need puzzles to solve and toys to play with, or other animals. They have a need to do something, to have a job. So I think the law of labor applies to them too.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. And I think with kids too, especially like the young ones who like to help. So they like to have a like a job and feel like they're helping the family, they're contributing, their participation is important. And it's funny because they have this sense since early age. They want to be useful.
Yeah.
And we have our friend Carol with us too. She has 3 little ones. Carol, we miss you here. One day we've seen you in person soon, hopefully. And it is very interesting that you talk about how much a couple of things as you guys were talking that in a decade or two, even in the past 6 months, a lot of our work has changed, a lot of the ways we work, and we've done some leaps in technology that we didn't think we could before that fast, and we've made it happen, and we didn't need that much to just say, okay, now I can do a lot of stuff from home. And yes, if you think about the times, even the message you read, Eric, about Jesus, right? In the end, Emmanuel says Jesus worked all the time. And Jesus was a carpenter by profession. So he learned in his culture was, to learn some sort of profession. Even Paul was also a weaver, even though he was from a wealthy family. They still learned something that could be considered a job. But Jesus went with the disciples to fish, and he went into the villages, and maybe he wasn't doing carpentry, but he was healing, he was talking to people, he was feeding, he was consoling. And in those types of work, even 2000 years ago, imagine a job which would be much harder than it is today. Yet we have parts of the country and parts of the world where work is still very difficult. The life is still very labor intensive. And yet we have other areas that have more technology and different services and different goods. And as we automate more, maybe we'll have less time doing things, and then more time doing the non-physical labor. So for example, think about when we automate our homes. in places like Jupiter, probably the work that we do in our homes is probably not similar, right? They have animals who do some work too, the animals that are already moving towards the human kingdom where they help around. And then it would free our time to volunteer. It frees our time to spray. It frees our time to fraternal counseling and spiritual Christ counseling. So it's very interesting to see the progression of and hopefully we will also add that to our numbers and as part of what we produce as a society, and the unpaid labor one day will be more considered, and there'll be more it makes me think about again Osalar. For some reason Osalar is the topic of the night, where um Miss Laura was, she cared about a lot. She was one of the persons in the home. She received Andrea Luiz in her home, and she mentioned that she had a lot of bonus hours in pro of the community because she also received a lot of children in her home. You know, that she gained much more bonus hours by taking care of the children that were there temporarily. Remember, I talk about Nasolar because it's a beautiful place to be. We all aim to be in a colony like Nasolar, but remember, Nasolar is a transitional colony. It's not higher spheres. We feel good about reading it because everybody has shelter, everybody has food, people work, there's no fights, right? So that's good. But then it's a transitional colony where people are spending time, they're learning, they're going to return. Yet her job of taking care of the children was very important, where a lot of caregiving is unpaid because you work your job, you have to work before and after. Even caregiving for all older family members is it's a very labor intensive and unnecessarily yet remunerated. So there's a lot of things we can improve, and there's a lot of good progress already being done. And then we always, this what we're doing today, when our viewers are doing at their homes, when they do the gospel at home, that's work. Because for each one of us there's 3 or 4 spirits on the earth. Imagine if there's only one if you are praying, the spirits can tap in and they can come, and you can have the spirits being helped. Even if you go to today was Labor Day, so a lot of people might have spent with family and friends in a socially distanced way, and you can like be there and you can pray for everybody. You can visualize the people's guardian angels. You're still enjoying life. You're still being together with people. Yet you can serve them as well. One more, not just serve them the food and cook for them and care for them, but you can like visually, mentally visualize the spirits and talk to them and say, please help me say good things. So sharing this content is work, and it's service because it goes above duty. Is in the realm of service. Any other thoughts, comments about the law of labor?
Well, you mentioned that it's one of the law of nature too. So having work as in a useful occupation, something important that all of us need to do, even if we don't need for like financial means for whatever reason, or even if have some difficulties for certain jobs. There are useful occupations that we can find to use our time, like you mentioned, praying, but something else that we can find to help others or educate ourselves too is like some useful occupation.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned rest, and that rest is okay, and that it's good to labor, it's good for us, but rest in the right amounts at the right times is an important part to allow us to recuperate and so we can labor better.
Yeah, I agree. That increases productivity, right? There are studies that show that if you're able to take breaks, go, walk or do something, not just stare at the computer, you're more productive. If people take vacation time, they are able to be more productive. What was the other thing? And I also think that's it's part of us taking care of our body, right? Because if we don't rest, we get sick.
Get a good night.
And we fight with everyone, so we should take some rest.
And I think it's always about moderation, right? Because we can take the word and be like, oh, the Spirit told us to rest. and all people do is rest. But it's really we spend a lot of, as Evelyn said, a lot of time is not at our work, but we have to sleep 7 to 8 hours average. Someone like Chico Xavier and Divaldo can sleep a little bit less. Other Dalai Lama may sleep a little bit less, but in our physical composition, when you sleep physiologically, you're cleansing, your body is detoxing, your brain is forming memories. But each person, as they said, the limit to work is up to the person. So it's up to us to be very mindful that we cannot just say, okay, I want to rest. And even when you're resting, you can still do work. You can still find someone to volunteer. You can still find something to you cannot spend 24 hours just resting, right? Sleep 8 hours and rest all the time. So it's all about moderation. And
And part of
there are
resting, I'm sorry, but part of that resting can be meditation, reading something that's good for developing your spiritual knowledge, attending video meetings related to spiritism.
because here you're not resting, you're actually labor, you're working. But yeah, you're right. But it's about moderation. So if you and I mean, the three of us coincidentally work with computers all day. So it's not physically intensive, except that if you stay still the whole day in front of the computer, you may be a little stiff. It's not good for your health. It's akin to smoking, right? Already immobility and lack of movement is as detrimental to the health as smoking and eating too much. But then there are other folks who work. Richmond is a hot place, and it's in summer, 100 degrees on the roof. They may need a little bit more rest than you and I need because it's physical intensive labor. Um, and parents may need a little bit more rest, and that's when the meditation and reading can come about, because there's really no rest for parents. So there's only moments of rest. So we have to be balanced. And the good thing is that about free will, the law of freedom says we have freedom, so we can choose how much we work, and our own conscience will tell us if that's coherent with our plans and what we wanted to do. So that's true.
I think part of the law of labor is the purpose is to develop our intelligence. And I found out early in my career that, wow, there's a lot more to learn. And I've been learning my entire career. There's always more things to learn.
That's true.
All right, friends. I think we will finish our labor session by praying. So I'm going to invite our friend Evelyn, to pray for us as Eric and I, will be removed temporarily from our stream. Evelyn, the floor is yours.
So, good night, everyone. If you can, take a deep breath, close your eyes. Good Lord, guardian angels and spirit guides, thank you for being here with us, bringing these beautiful teachings. And we ask you for help so we can deeply understand the meaning of these words and put them in practice in our daily lives. May God help us connect with our mentors so we're inspired to do the good, see the good, and especially see the good in others, and help all those around us evolve and do better. We ask for God's blessing on all of us, especially during these difficult times, so we can have strength, hope, and faith to go on, trusting the better days will come. We thank you for your protection, and with your permission, we end tonight's meeting. So be it.
Thank you, Evelyn, for that beautiful prayer. And friends, we come to an end, and we'll be with you guys again next week talking about celebrating life. So we invite everybody to be with us Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you very much, Eric and Evelyn, for being here. And remember, we also have tomorrow morning studies of the book Right Path that we translated and revised. That will be premiering at 8 a.m. And at 8 p.m., we're also going to have another study on friendship and prayer by the Spiritist magazine that will be also broadcast here in our Facebook and YouTube. Remember, spread the good news, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again on Monday. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Thank you.